Welcome back to another episode of Folklore. I'm Marcus Pittman, CEO of Lore TV, and with us today is the one and only creator of Earthworm Jim. Uh, were you creator of the Sega Genesis Jurassic Park game too? I know we talked about that at your house.
Well, it's one thing to say that you created a game. I was a leader, a lead on that game. I was
Yeah,
the
okay.
main guy on that game, but I didn't create Jurassic Park. On Earthworm
No,
Jim, I
no,
created the
that was
character.
Michael Crichton.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so Doug TenNapel, dude, thanks for joining us. You've been with us since the very start of the Lord journey, encouraging us and pushing us forward. And so you were one of the first guests I come to mind that when we
Yeah.
started doing this. Jason should be joining us. He said he's going to be interacting in the chat. So
Okay.
he's currently traveling right now,
He
but
can make fun of us
he,
in the chat.
he can make fun of us. But all right, man. Well, let's start out.
But I've always been a big fan of both you guys, you and Jason, for that reason that we were always kindred spirits. Like at the start, kind of a bunch of guys into kind of skater, punk rock, alternative, yet loved mainstream media, big action, kind of big thoughts, how entertainment used to be big fun. And then suddenly everyone pulled the plug on everything you loved about big entertainment. And then we start looking around going, well, what are we going to do?
Right. Yeah, and I think that was one of the bases for lore is like this was 4 years ago. We saw the direction. I think for me, I saw it when Netflix pulled out of filming in Atlanta, but because of the heartbeat bill. That was
Right.
probably in about 2018, 19, and then I think I heard too that Netflix stopped filming in North Carolina because of their gay bathroom law.
Oh,
And
brother.
and
Yeah.
so OBX isn't even filmed in the Outer Banks, which was
Right.
crazy to me because we would go to the Outer Banks every year for vacation
Yeah.
as a family, and I was just like,
Well,
you
pretty
guys are
soon they're
filming?
only going to film in areas that allow pedophilia, and that's going to be California once again. It's the only way that LA can keep a lock on their Hollywood jobs.
Yeah, yeah. So that was 5-6 years ago. I was like, oh, this isn't going in a good direction, and so we started lore. But through that process, we got to meet you, and it's been a blessing hearing your stories and stuff. So, what would you say your like Earthworm Jim is your biggest claim to fame?
Probably, yeah. It's probably the most famous as far as penetrating pop culture, and because I created it. So to me, I take a little more credit on that because it's so rare to get to create an idea and
Yeah.
then work on the game team to make the game and be the lead animator, the voice. And then I got to produce the animated series for Universal, design the toy line. So it's kind of my biggest claim where I'll say, that's my curriculum vitae. But I have to put that in context. It's not a big deal to me. I do not care about my past accomplishments. I'm not sitting here stroking myself going, oh, I made Earthworm Jim and I'm all that. I'm all that. It's really between my friends and I, we kind of laugh, at how stupid pop culture can be. And they really are kind of just Happy Meals and cereal boxes and have fun, with the Saturday morning cartoon.
Right.
It shouldn't be something where you identify yourself as that's truth, goodness, and beauty. And that's all I've ever, that's all I'm ever supposed to do.
Right.
It's kind of, guys, it was a great opportunity to work on and to pay rent. And that's about it.
Yeah, you don't have to get plastic surgery to look like a Barbie doll, right? Yeah. Like, was that about? Was that a reference to Comic-Con culture and just the obsession
Yeah.
with that and the identity in pop culture? Is that?
Yeah. And, Comic-Con pop culture of comics is a late development. So for
Yeah.
years, comics were underground, but mainstream, right? If you were buying the Iron Man comic or Spider-Man, you were going to the 7-Eleven and buying it off the spinner rack. This is even before like there was such a thing as a comic book store. They were out there, but the later development is the San Diego Comic-Con blowing up in the late 90s, early 2000s, and becoming a giant cultural event that attracted non-comic book artists
Mm.
and Hollywood and video games, and kind of you went from being the nerd into comics to being the cool guy into comics. And it ruined comics, of course.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah.
It has to, but you know, I was into comics back when it was truly a countercultural tiny thing. Now it's the mainstream thing, and that counterculture tiny thing, you have to find it elsewhere, probably, than in mainstream comics. You'll find it in independent publishers, or what you guys do at Lure on independent animation. You'll find stuff on the internet, web comics, things like that are much more in the spirit of what true comics used to be for most of its existence. Even stuff for children, you know, comics for kids used to be more of a thing. And now you'd probably find something like that on web comics.
Right.
Mainstream.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I remember it was all about just getting the Sunday newspaper, and my great grandma would actually send me uh, envelopes in the mail. She lived in South Carolina. I lived in Virginia. My great grandma would send me envelopes just with clippings of Family Circus
Oh,
comics,
I loved Family
and my
Circus.
grandma kept them all in the piano bench.
Yeah.
and
And Marcus, check this out. That's one of the few things I've ever failed at, was trying to be a syndicated cartoonist. So I mailed in over 20, you know, strips between probably from the time I was in high school, like freshman, sophomore in high school, all the way through post college, probably right before I created Earthworm Jim. I was trying to be a comic book strip, comic strip artist for newspapers back when that was a viable business. And I failed. They liked it. I got very close to getting picked up, and then in the end, it didn't work out.
what comics were you working on? Was it anything we've seen,
No, I
or
mean, I was
did
up.
it create something else?
I would create something. It was something new every time. Now, I was one of the artists they considered to reboot Popeye, and so I was a big Popeye fan. I submitted my version of Popeye, which they rejected. It got close, but it didn't make it. I was I had one called Toy Box that was very close to Toy Story before Toy Story was invented. How's that? Had a bunch of living
Okay.
toys and plastic animals and things that lived in a world of humans, you know, and had to stay small and secret, kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing. So let's go back to the culture building, that sort of thing, pop
Sure.
culture. You know, you mentioned comics were underground. For the most part, it seems that every major pop culture thing started though with this sort of underground sort of thing.
Yeah.
So like what is it about the way the world works that is the consistent theme?
Yeah. That's a good thing to, interesting comment slash question, because it is true. And I believe it's because in the art versus commerce thing, it's an art form before it's a business. So you have people everywhere doing music for love before they get paid to do it. You see people doing video games, small hobbyists, before it became a big business, going, let's do this to make some money. They're going, let's make a cool game.
Right.
Comics, the same. I think they start with things that people are passionate and loving about. And then the money comes in and goes, let's build a movie studio, or let's build an animation factory instead of just love animation, is probably what happens. I think it starts small because it starts in a place of love and invention. And then when other people start loving it, it has to be multiplied across mass media, and
Right.
you have to fund it, and in comes the money. And then it turns into something else. It's
Yeah.
profitable, whatever. It can still be an art form if the businessmen care, but usually the businessmen have money for reasons other than caring about art.
Right.
No.
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, well, that seems to be just sort of the consistent theme. I think if you look now for at the current entertainment landscape, you see everyone's like, yeah, we're just going to put $250 million towards these Marvel movies, and they forget that there was 100 years of comic books that came before those movies were even successful. And then, the money. It's hard to say it without sounding like a liberal, but the money comes in and corrupts that and everything gets focused on sort of the bottom line, and they
Yeah.
forget really that it's the love of the art that gave them what they have now, and so there's that sort of
Yeah, the money doesn't have to corrupt by necessity, but it will
right.
have some kind of an effect on the form. For instance, you and I have both had a McDonald's cheeseburger,
Yeah,
and it's not because we went to the original restaurant. We've been there, but I mean, we didn't go to the original restaurant where it was served. We have the factory version that's been produced for everyone, and they actually are more careful about the DNA of a McDonald's cheeseburger
yes,
than most entertainment companies are with the DNA of a Thor story.
yeah, and they've reduced the prices and the costs and
Yeah,
stuff in a pretty incredible way if you look at it from that point. But I think I heard McDonald's is like the most amount of calories per dollar in the history of the world.
yeah.
Um, so I mean, there's benefits, and of course, there's the negatives of that too that
But
come in.
mostly it's a benefit. The negatives are from people
Yeah,
making bad choices, not the
that's right.
company. The
That's
company
right.
did something right. It's the people
Right. Well, it's like
that.
yeah, it's like furries at Comic Con. It's not necessarily Comic Con's fault. It's just
Yeah,
so, but no, that no, that's yeah. So that's because one of the things like I see that we're missing, especially when you talk about I guess conservative or faith based side or whatever. We have all these organizations that are pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into faith based streaming or conservative streaming or
yeah,
whatever, and the mentality is like, well, if we just write a big enough check, we can compete with Netflix. And they forget that Netflix started by like delivering DVDs in one city,
right, right,
and they didn't even know it was going to happen because they got lucky enough that the DVD that they first mailed to didn't do automated processing, but it was hand processing, and so it
right,
didn't destroy the DVD. But they didn't know any better. And then as they started to
right.
move along, but if it would have destroyed the DVD, they would have never done. So we don't think
Well,
about
and
like
they
the
weren't
cost of
profitable because they made movies back then. They weren't even profitable for their first 10 years of business. They
right,
made their money off of the stock price
right. That's
of
right.
being Netflix. So being a good idea, they brought the stock in. It wasn't even their subscriber base that brought the money in for most of Netflix's life existence. It's very recent that they've been showing other profits from other sources.
Yeah, that's
Most
how
of it was the stock
Amazon
price
did the
was
same
doubling,
thing.
tripling, whatever, whatever. You don't have to go and exist on an open market and compete with your stories
Right,
the way that a Christian delivery system would have to compete.
right,
And there's probably a Christian version of it too, where people are subscribing to a Christian channel because they're Christians and they are for that Christian's message. They're doing it for other reasons than the stories drove them.
right. Yeah, I think the same is true uh, for a lot of things like that. I think I want to talk about because we there was this time where Christians we did have culture. We had Veggie Tales,
Oh yeah,
mainstream level. Like I worked at Chuck E. Cheese during the time VeggieTales was really at its peak, and they were playing silly songs with Larry at Chuck E. Cheese every
yeah,
day, every 15 minutes. And then you could get Adventures in Odyssey in Chick-fil-A meals. You could get the
yeah.
cassette tapes. There was this massive Christian culture. I don't know if you can see it back there, but I have a Gerbert hat
Oh
right
yeah,
there by the MAGA hat from
yeah,
Gerbert,
yeah,
given to me by Chris Christian, who made that show.
yeah.
And so there was this time where we did have this, and then that just all went away, and some of it was cheesy, and you look back on it and go, oh man, salty the Bible. You look back on that
Yeah,
stuff
it's
and you go,
easy but penetrated. That's how I learned First John 4:7 and 8, even as a grown teenager, was from that song.
right, yeah.
So it's
So
not.
so so what happened? like how did we go from Veggie Tales at Chuck E. Cheese, this mainstream sort of Christian culture?
I don't think anything's changed that much, Marcus. I think because every once in a while a Christian thing breaks through.
Uh-huh.
Duck Dynasty is another
Yeah.
Christian product that broke through to secular markets and was celebrated by everyone. Barely Christian, but Christian,
Yeah.
and very culturally unique, unique and interesting and funny. So I see that's how I see VeggieTales and maybe some Christian rock and stuff like that. Is every once in a while something breaks through, but it didn't break through just because it was Christian. It was Christian and pretty unique.
Yeah.
And
It was
so
actually it was actually
if
decent. Yeah.
yeah, if anything, and I would put The Chosen as another one
Yeah.
up there. So I would say if something doesn't do that, it's usually not because it's not Christian enough, because usually everything's plenty Christian enough if you have Christians making it, trying to do that stuff. It's probably the unique, unpredictable thing where something gets much bigger, than it ought to. It defies gravity, let's just say. And so I can't explain it. I'm only saying I think you can go back into the 60s, late 60s, early 70s and look at Larry Norman blowing up, or even Keith Green blowing up, or even the super Christian bad
Yeah.
movies, or not This Present Darkness. Yeah, that's the book version, but Thief in the Night. There's always been kind of these ghetto Christian things that blew up into mainstream culture and made a mark, right?
Yeah. No,
So there just aren't that many.
right. Right. Why do you think there's not that many?
Because you can't predict success, and culture has its own way of picking winners and losers that are
Yeah.
outside of our funding wishes or our best intentions. Like, you cannot force a hit, right? People try
Right.
it. So no matter how much Christian money you put behind something, you can't force a hit, and that's a problem. So that's why my recommendation is always, for most people, always do cheap projects if you're going to succeed, and do another one. So cheap films, cheap series, cheap comics, cheap music, and then you'll see which one
Yeah.
defies gravity, and
Yeah.
that's the one that you invest in as it's taking off.
It's funny you say that because that's just basic business.
Yeah, yeah,
It's but I don't like I don't think we're definitely not see that, especially with like union rules and
yeah.
with Motion Picture Association and all, and DGA and Writers Guild. You can't do cheap anything anymore. So everything is immediately in that. It's got to make it sort of vain. And I think what
Yeah, but
we've all.
you can guerrilla film
Oh yeah. Oh,
still
people do.
legally.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, people do, but I think like when you ask like why aren't the networks, why do they keep giving us all these hashes and remakes?
Yeah.
I think it's because, well, that's the only way to justify the costs of some of these productions that they've inflated,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so, and I think uh, they've also squashed the indie market by just buying up loads of whatever and just burying it as content, and there hasn't been any real breakthrough, um, not recently or anything, but like of new IP. It's very rare now that you see
Yeah.
them even attempting.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to break through just because there's so much stuff, and the audience is getting atomized. The used to be 3 channels, now it's everyone. I have my own YouTube channel. It's literally every single person can be their own channel now. That it's going to be very hard with everyone getting their taste catered to and being able to separate out. I like blah blah murder mystery podcasts. I like furry comic books, whatever it is. It's all branching off
Right,
and
right,
specializing. It's like that leaf mantis that looks exactly like some kind of a Japanese orchid, and it only looks like that Japanese orchid. And if you made that
yeah,
thing try to survive out in the desert, it would just die because it looks exactly like a Japanese orchid. It can only live on that thing and camouflage on that thing. We're all getting so specialized that we can do very well, within our little group of specialized living on a Japanese orchid. And that's all that channel can do. And so you're not going to get things that unify everyone around a piece of entertainment unless it starts getting more generally telling the kinds of stories that people all generally like. It
Right.
might be Taylor Swift's music. I haven't heard it, so I don't even know how to gauge that exactly. But I'm saying there might be a uniting feature. I was just thinking of one of those The Voice TV shows where they see people sing and there's Snoop Dogg's one of the celebrity guests, and they pick a guy. I think those shows, the audience is shrinking. By the way, they're only old people watching them now.
Yeah.
Even YouTube's aging out. It's like
Yeah.
55 and up is the biggest market on YouTube and on like we watch Survivor. Ange and I do, the beloved Miss TenNapel. It's all old people commercials like catheters and old pills and hearing aids and Survivor is trying to stay alive by having, as guests on the show, as contestants, they're having like YouTubers and podcasters on, like a ton of them now. I'm going, honey, are you
Right.
noticing like these aren't doctors and lawyers? These are all because they're hoping that they'll talk about it on their social media, provide
Right.
free marketing because they can't make it. They're not, TV's dead. The pipeline is dead.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. There,
done.
there there needs to be new ways of funding young artists and being able to do that and build out that sort of underground market for a younger generation. I just wrote an article today about Zuckerberg, and he's made this crazy shift, right? And like it's just like he's curly hair, he's Hawaiian, he's surfing with an American flag and a beer in his hand. And everyone goes, why is he doing that? He's calling himself libertarian now. And everyone thinks it's like some grand political conspiracy. And then just like yesterday, he introduced these new glass, the Orions, which are just glasses are a lot thicker than what I have, but they're just the first prototype of basically, just way smaller and lighter and more functional than Apple's Vision Pro thing.
Huh.
Like it hit me. It was like he doesn't care about Facebook anymore. He doesn't. He doesn't. He is focusing on the younger generation right now. He wants all their attention, and he knows that Gen Alpha, the tail end of Gen Z, but beginning of Gen Alpha, they're going to be using these glasses day to day like normal, while everyone else, all the old people, are still stuck on their cell phones. And you hear him talk about it. He was on the Acquired podcast. He's doing all these podcasts running rounds right now, coming back as the new, they call him Zucker 2.0 or Zuck 2.0. And you
Yeah.
just go,
Or
oh, this guy.
he's labeling himself libertarian, which I always thought he was probably more of a libertarian than a liberal. I think his wife was probably liberal,
Yeah.
and making him do all that stuff. And I think he realized that I think a lot of these social media companies are realizing their brand is
Yeah.
becoming censorship and state-run media, and they do not want that brand to stick.
He said that there are two major mistakes he made. The first one he said was he misjudged the importance of custom Facebook apps for iPhone and
Right.
Android.
Right.
And they
To make it
initially
a
did.
platform for apps.
Yeah,
Right.
it was all HTML5, and you would press the Facebook app and it would just take you to the Facebook website. And he said, well, we did that because we didn't want to implement 100 different versions of Android apps.
Right.
And then they lost like half of their stock valuation because of that. He said that was like a 1.5-year mistake. He said, but 2016 in the politics, that was a 20-year mistake for Facebook,
Right.
starting in 2016. So
Right.
I think he realizes the damage that's caused. But I think, and the way I put it is, he's quiet quit Facebook, and he's just complete. He can't
Well, but
say
Facebook's the only thing he's got that's profitable.
right,
The most profitable thing right now. You can't abandon it, but
right.
he's looking at the age demographic and
Yeah, that's
going,
why I said he quiet quit.
and he's going,
Right?
this thing, I better come up with something else and it better work. Cause he tried the Meta
Yeah,
crypto torso live on, that thing, and it didn't work. So he fired all those people. Like he let
yeah,
all those people go. So he's just like the Christian industry. trying to come up with a thing to float it out, and it has to stick. Well,
Yeah.
just because you're Mark Zuckerberg and you have all the money in the world to take a lot of shots at that home plate, to swings,
Yeah.
a lot of swings at that, still doesn't mean you're going to get the hit that's going to sustain your whole company. It's got to be a real
Yeah.
home run. That was what was so weird about Steve Jobs and Apple, is how many times he could come out with an iPad and an iPhone, and and it worked, and culture bought it.
Yeah, they
And
talked about that in the podcast I was listening to, is just specifically that Apple takes a lot of time on one thing, and they kind of wait to see where everything's going. But Zuckerberg is about being a strategist of a board game where every move gives him the most amount of moves.
yeah,
So he likes to implement quickly and fast. What's his line is do things quickly and break things, or something like that is
yeah.
his line. It's a completely different strategy there, but to do that is like, it's just like you said, like you got to do things cheaply, you got to get things out
And he
there. I
doesn't
think,
have the empathy that Steve Jobs and Apple always had. They always had, I had this feeling about them. I could be wrong, but they just felt like they were going like, what does everyone need right now?
yeah,
Felt more like what they were saying, because they'd go, it'd sure be cool to make glasses, but they
yeah,
never said like, what does everyone need right now? They need computer glasses. That's
right,
not what they go. They need to be able to carry a computer in their hand and be able to call people, So
right,
I just think there's a wisdom there that Zuckerberg does not have. That empathy of what can I give to everyone?
right, yeah. I think you're right. I think
He'd go, I
that's
know,
definitely true.
AIDS.
Yeah,
It's like,
but
no, Mark, people don't want your AIDS.
yeah, well, the reason I bring that up, we went on a tangent with that, is just because there is what it seems to be a legitimate focus on his part to say we need to look at the generation ahead of us or behind us and build something for them, that they're going to use. Whereas I think for us on our side, it's like, well, what are the boomers going to make for the boomers? What is millennials going to make for millennials?
Yeah.
And that sort of long strategic thinking, especially when it comes to art and stuff, we don't really think very thoroughly or deeply about that.
I do think that first thought of what do people want, give them what they love, is something that's a real good start. And it's not something we often think about. And in the arts, it's always going to be tough, because sometimes what people love is fireproof. And you're going to have a bunch of artists going, well, I was going to give them what they love, but I'm not going to give them that. And that's what they love,
Yeah, no, that
So,
I hear
so
that from filmmakers every day.
yeah, they
Uh,
don't, we want to make a blah, blah, but not, we want to make a fireproof, but smart and intellectual to impress the elites so that it won't succeed like fireproof, you know?
right, yeah, no, or uh, no, that was a great point. Me and Jason talk about it all the time in terms of like, everybody wants the faster horse. And so it's so the challenge is doing something that people realize, oh, I actually did want that. I actually did want the car. And but that takes risk and capital, and there's a lot of other factors
Yeah,
that go into that. But let's get back to your stuff, because I wanted to talk with you specifically about Five Iron Frenzy.
sure.
And you did their album covers.
Yeah. The first,
How did that come about?
uh, I was, I was approached by, was it 5 Minute Walk Records? Was that them?
I don't
Or
remember.
Tooth and Nail? I think it was Tooth and Nail were spinning off 5 Minute Walk Records, and they were just, they had a rough cut of the first Five Iron Frenzy album, and they said, we want to know if you'd like to do some album art for us. And I said, well, send me a couple of bands and let me listen to them, and if I like their music, I'll do it. And they would say, well, how much do you charge? I said, if I like their music, I'll do it for free. I said, I just like making art. And I go, but you can't art direct me. So if you don't like it, you just can't use it on the cover. You have to throw it, back to me. and agreeing on. They go, okay, fine. So they sent me Five Iron Frenzy, and I said, I really like this band. I would love to do an album cover. And I did that first album cover with the guy with the goggles on and the wolves behind him. And they showed it to the band, and the band loved it, and they went with it. That's how it happened. It was that I, when they came out to Hollywood, I did get to meet with them probably right before The End Is Near. I did that, a painting of the old man with the golf club and all that. I got to hang with them, and I became pretty good friends with the trumpet player and Dennis Culp, the trombone player, and Micah. Were probably closer than anybody else. And Jeff the girl, a little bit on face. We were Facebook buddies, but mostly just they let me do what I wanted, and so I never charged them. They just tell me when they needed a cover. If they didn't use me, it wasn't a big deal, and
Yeah.
that's how it happened.
I was just like super into ska around that time. It felt like it kind of felt like Christians had their own genre.
They did. They're one of the most unique Christian bands ever.
Yeah.
In fact, I would even say they're barely Christian. We'll put it that way.
Right. Right.
But they put on one of the best shows. I thought their music had great arrangements. I think Reese is obviously one of the funniest guys ever for being a communist. And then, but I just like them.
Yeah.
They made they did their own thing. They were always doing their own thing out of Colorado.
Yeah. And I think you're right about Tooth and Nail. Like they really did things in a way that like the music and the artists that they signed really went mainstream, and it didn't just stay in
Yeah,
the Christian circles.
like they did. MXPX was their big one, right?
Yeah.
MXPX was huge. And I first listened to them on Loveline with Adam Carolla, on the LA stations in the 90s. They had the intro was done by MXPX. So, it's weird because stuff that wants to penetrate into secular culture will,
Right.
when secular culture is ready for it, you don't have to push it.
Right. That's
So do what's fun and cool. And if you fail, welcome to what 99% of artists experience is failure.
Yeah, I think no, I think I think that's absolutely right. And I think I do feel like the culture is shifting, especially from the non-Christian, non-conservative side. They're kind of getting fed up too, and we've gotten a lot of traction with what we're doing with lore and stuff because they just want normal stories. That's why we started say,
Yeah.
we shifted the tagline to be radically normal, and just people just they don't mind being preached at subtly, as long as
Yeah.
it's not, wall to wall in your face, sort of whether it's woke Hollywood or pure flick sort of
Yeah.
thing. They just want good stories, and they can determine the messaging on their own. And so I think the timing is right, really, for really good art and independent filmmakers to kind of break through right now. I think people are really hungry for it.
Yeah. I
And
mean, I'm angrier at artists than I am at the pipeline. If there's not good art out there that you want to watch or hear, I'm angry at artists. I've
right,
always have been. I'm like, look, even if they fixed the pipeline and opened it wide up and would pay you $1 million for your movies are shite. Your TV shows are shite and your comics are shite. No one should pay for it. So I'm going, and this is true by the way, this isn't just Christian artists because
yeah, you're
secular
right.
artists are worse than Christian artists,
Yeah,
actually. It's everyone's art is shite. Shame on all artists, musicians, filmmakers. You all suck. None of you are doing your job. And I hope you lose. Given what you make, I hope you don't make it. Good.
right. And
Good.
no,
Thank God. I don't want you to be rewarded.
yeah, that's right. I think I, I I think a lot of artists, they just blame the studio systems, or they
Yeah.
blame this, or they blame that, and it's like, dude, just make something. Just get out there and make
Yeah.
stuff, and just bring attention and stuff. I've talked to so many artists. They pitch me an idea, and I'm like, is that the idea you really want to make, or is that the
Yeah.
idea you think, Pureflix will buy or some other Christian
Yeah.
streaming company will buy? And they're like, oh, I just think it'll sell. It's like, dude,
Yeah.
just make good content, and you'll find your audience. And there are a lot of options right now. There's a lot of competition right now, but competition is always good in the long run, in terms of what it builds and stuff. And I think, we talk about competition. Well, think about like basic cable. It's like streaming isn't new. Like we had cable with like 100 different channels on it, and they were all fighting for content and whatnot.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of value. I think we've lost this value, but there's a lot of value in having a Food Network or having a Cartoon Network or an MTV2. And it allowed those audiences to it allowed artists to find those loyal audiences within that niche, and then that niche expanded and became more broad and mainstream. So the opportunity is there. It's always been there. The challenges have always been there. And then but I think, yeah, you're right. Like the artist, you just got to make stuff.
Yeah. Number one, make stuff, have fun, true, good, and beautiful, and fun. It should be a blast to make, hard work, but a blast. And it should be cheap enough for you to make one and maybe make another. So you're not
Yeah.
dying on the vine while you explore and create, and then hope you get lucky.
Right.
Because that's every entertainer ever, was they
Right.
still had to get, while they worked on their skills, and get lucky. But the other thing is, like, if you're not really making stuff that people want to see, the audience will tell you. I hate to say it, but some people, they just have no business making. My son, one of them, who wants to do something very impractical. He goes, I'm thinking about being an animator. And I just said, son, nobody needs your animation. So it's not that I don't want you to be an animator. I do. I want you to experience the joy of being an animator. But by the time you go to college and graduate, I go, AI will be animating. You probably won't have an opportunity. I go, so now what are you going to do? Are you going to animate? And he said, probably not. I go, well, because you probably only were going to do it for a job. Now here's the difference between you and I. I had no chance of making it as animator, and I animated every day of my life from 4th grade until I finally made it 20 years later.
Mm.
I said, that's the difference, is I loved animating and I just didn't, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't care. And today's kids are like going, I'll only try if I'm going to succeed,
Right.
And it's kind of like I just think like guys like Steven Spielberg, was doing the Duelist or Duel or whatever it is, as his first made for TV movie and Twilight Zone episodes. I think they were great at film and story and thinking in that genre and relating to so many people, and horror people. Like I just think David Blum or whatever his name is, the horror guy. I think he has a lot of wisdom about what scares a whole lot of people. Like you've got to have empathy to take $12,000 and do Paranormal Activity and make one
Yeah.
of the scariest movies ever
You
made
talk
for
about
like
Bloomhouse. Yeah.
zero. Yeah, Blumhouse, to make zero budget, horrifying movie, worked within his means. That's what I'd be looking for among Christian people with limited budget, is what
Right.
can you make that's cheap and wonderful, and then you have a chance. But I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's like South Park. You have construction paper around. Make
Yeah,
something with the construction paper, and then that eventually becomes
yeah.
a billion-dollar IP at some
And
point. But
I saw that first short, the first South Park short that was released.
you got a VHS of it?
The
You
VHS of it, it
Yeah.
was 1994, 95, 95-ish, in that area. And by the way, Trey Parker went to school with Dennis Culp, the trombone player from Five Iron Frenzy.
Oh, that's
They knew each other and were friends in college. How's that for a
that's
little
amazing.
a little tie? Because Culp and I would talk about Trey back, but Trey was huge. So they did this South Park short. That was their college project. The pilot that and that Comedy Central ended up picking up was their college project. And it was finished and it was wonderful and it was amazing. I just don't get, there's no
And
way
it's
you can stop
the
that.
and the show's still relevant today, if not more so,
Yeah.
which is insane to think about,
But they
especially if you
nailed
look.
the voices, they nailed the humor, they nailed the art direction from their first college project. Dude,
And they haven't
dude.
had to do anything else since.
Yeah, yeah. If you get it right, you know,
Yeah,
Mike
yeah,
Judge, similar with his art style, doing King of the Hill and Beavis and Butthead, similar to the kind of stuff that he did in college. These are very cheap, rudimentary forms of animation and entertainment. They take away the excuses of everyone goes, I don't have the money. Well, there's enough indie people out there doing major, Blair Witch Project, Kevin Smith doing Clerks, kind of the Dogma 95 projects in the 90s. Major breakthrough stuff with no budget
right,
they were always my heroes because, or Rodriguez doing El Mariachi. They were always my heroes because I go, oh, see, I was using studios as an excuse. And they
right.
just,
Yeah,
you know,
agree. And like I think, when we go through sort of like artists on lore and some of their shows get funded, some of the shows don't. I don't ever think it's a failure that a show doesn't get funded. It's like we'll
right.
go pitch something else. Like that's really great. And then, then you get a show like Florida Lee, which is this animated cartoon by a guy who, Ethan Hill, and he lives in a trailer in the woods in, Eastern Texas, and he charged. I think the cost of each episode was $200 an episode,
Nice.
and he funded all 6 or 7 episodes in like 3 weeks, and then delivered them. And he's working on season 2 now. He's got a pretty big fan base for that show.
That's so
And then
wonderful.
and then the second episode, he's like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna run the whole second episode through a VCR, and then the VCR will be the look of the cartoon." It's like amazing. The guy, he made a video thanking all the lore subscribers for being able to buy him an air mattress so he doesn't have to sleep on the
Oh,
floor
see?
anymore. Like that's what it's all about. But I think, it is that sort of thorns in the ground, overcoming those thorns in the ground sort of thing. And looking with what you have, and then you can go, look at that guy. Like that guy did that with $200, and then somebody else can come to Ethan and say, "Dude, I'll give you 50 grand an episode, 100 grand an episode at a later time because you know what
Yeah.
he can do for 200, right?" So, and that's really, I think, when you talk about just making something, and for the lore artists, is just like make something, just pitch
Yeah.
something, see what
And
happens,
if
and
if they never made Adventure Time or if they never made South Park, it'd be like, well, that happens too. People sometimes
yeah,
it doesn't hit. VeggieTales probably shouldn't have made it, but it made it. Putting on VCRs and trying getting into Target the way they did those episodes was very down homey.
yeah,
Let's try instead of let's put this up on the giant megalopolis blimp, and force it down people's throats. Most of those hits are small, loving, wonderful. So I'd rather see someone be, that's how U2 started that way, or Beatles played in clubs, small
yeah, yeah.
club.
With VeggieTales, they didn't have the computer power to do human shapes, so they just stuck with vegetables, and
Yeah.
they just used the construction paper in front of them, right? And so,
Work
um,
work in within your limits. And
yeah,
by
well,
the way, I brought up Adventure Time only because I remember when Fred Siebert, he did Federator cartoons, they gave him a budget to do like 50 shorts or 40 shorts at Nickelodeon.
yeah,
Limited budget, but he just said, "Look, I'll go to a bunch of animators and just say each of you can do, and you can do anything you want. I don't care what you do." He let me do 2 shorts, okay? And I was there working on my shorts, let me do anything I wanted to do, just like you did with our LaShawn cartoon. Anything I wanted to do, gave me money.
yeah. Let's talk about that.
Well, okay,
Yeah,
hold on 1 second. But my shorts didn't make it. But the guy in the cubicle next to me was named Pendleton Ward, and he made Adventure Time was his short. And you only need one hit, and it became the biggest show, in all of their Nickelodeon didn't buy it, by the way. Cartoon Network bought it. It became one of Cartoon Network's biggest hits in their
Yeah,
history.
it all started with a short.
And it ended up that on the crew was Rebecca Sugar, who's an old buddy of mine, and Patrick Hale, who did Over the Garden Wall. So it's like
Yeah,
it became you'll as you do these shorts, you only need one hit.
right.
You can't force the hit, but one of them, if you get enough of them going and it becomes a hit, you'll make money off it, and then that'll justify 100 more shorts.
Yeah, I mean that's when I pitch. I mean, like every day I pitch lore to investors, and I try to explain to them. I was like, no, what you want to do is you want to reduce the risk
That's
as
right.
much as possible on the distribution on the platform side, and then have people like Barely Biblical or Ethan Hill, Florida Lee, or the science fiction Esoterra Artificial Intelligence, which is not a cartoon. It's a science fiction short. It just won like Cannes best short film, or got selected for that.
Nice.
So, but I think they made the whole thing for like less than $5,000, a science fiction sort of thing. So reducing the risk on the platform side, giving artists the ability to create and to pitch ideas as much as possible, and then eventually you get that hit. Gothics was another one that won, I think, San Antonio Best Documentary for their film festival, and they're going to
Sure.
go to the international version from that. And now it's on Amazon Prime. It's hidden on Amazon Prime, but
Yeah.
but it's there, And so that's how we see lore, as like a place for artists to come, pitch a crazy idea, have the subscribers fund it, and then from there it kind of takes a life of its own. And that's why we're very peculiar about not making sure that we don't own the artist's IP and all that other sort of stuff, because we want this to just be the starting point. The channel 101, I guess, is probably the best example of that, but
Yeah.
in the animation field anyway. But yeah, that's it. But you mentioned LaShawn, and we haven't talked about it
LaShawn, the
much.
aborted black fetus is the full title.
Yeah, that's right. And so I'll set it up. So we just started lore, and we're like, we need crazy content, that's really we really need to do crazy content. And so we talked to you, and we did this Zoom call with you, and we said, hey, we're looking for the craziest idea, and you didn't know who we were, and
That's
you were
right.
like, I'm gonna scare these guys away. So tell the pitch.
Okay.
And
I said, first of all, you're not going to green light my idea. I don't believe you that you're going to fund what I want to make. And they said, just try us. And I did this. I had this little doodle of this little black, round, cute character. And I go, this show is called LaShawn, the aborted black fetus. It's a fetus that's alive and just wants to experience have a wonderful life. And he's in Santa Monica, and he was aborted, and he runs from Planned Parenthood and goes off and starts a new life. Okay, and Marcus shows up at my house with a suitcase that has the little locks on it, like FBI. I open it up, and there's cash, stacks of cash. He goes, is this enough? I go, yeah, that's enough to make
and
it.
not Mr. Beast money.
No, it wasn't. It was enough. It was enough to make it. And
No,
I
I mean, like,
went
it
out,
wasn't
got
the
a
fake.
crew.
It
I
wasn't the
paid a
fake
crew, and we
Mr.
made
Beast
it.
cash. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was real. It was real.
Andy Dick did the voice on it. Vic Mignogna did a voice on it. And it was this. It reminded me of the Federator stuff,
Yeah,
that brought out that Adventure Time. It was more important to make it than not make it. It's about having fun. Yeah, there it is. Exactly. Victor's over there doing the comment, like Marcellus Wallace's soul. Yeah, that's exactly the Pulp Fiction case we're talking about. Yeah, it looked like that.
yeah. No. I think because when we heard it, we were like, that's exactly the kind of content we want lore to be, where it's never going to be on the faith-based side, and it's not going to be on the typical mainstream, but there's this broad middle. And I think we like called you a few times or texted, and we
Yeah,
never got a response. And then at the time we were like, well, just hop on a plane and give them a briefcase
yeah.
and tell them to do the pilot, and we did, and we still have that, and we want to be able to get that thing going, but we want to make sure that we can be able to sustainably be able to fund that in future episodes of not just that, but just anything you want to do. And so
Yeah.
that's kind of been the hold on that. But yeah, Andy Dick is a voice, Vic Mignon is a voice, and so that's sort of we're sort of holding on to that for the right moment. And
Yeah. It was a fun, and I wanted a name that would kind of market it, if it had to be offensive enough to market itself, to try and penetrate out was kind of my theory on that.
right,
Is it needs to be funky enough, fun enough, a little offensive enough to really, so that the title itself would get people to want to see it. You know what I mean?
right,
Um, and I don't know if it'll succeed or not, but it certainly was something unique in my whole career of getting to do. How's that?
yeah, but I Jason wants to release that every single day, so I think
Yeah,
we'll probably do that and see what happens when we drop that. But that I'm excited about, and uh, just like you said, like it might not succeed, people might hate it, whatever, but we we made something, and maybe that'll inspire someone else to go, well, hey, if that can exist on lore, I could do mine. And then from there, you might get a hit. But ideally, what I'd like to see is just a bunch of independent artists just funding
yeah.
cartoons left and right. And
And for me, I'm 58 years old and I'm providing for a family with 4 kids in college. So it's very hard to financially be able to do this stuff. That's what bugs me is,
yeah,
it's weird because when I was poorer, it was easier to do more expensive stuff.
yeah,
You know what I mean? When I was
right,
poor, I would say, let's make a black and white film, guys, and you'd go out and get an 8 millimeter or whatever and shoot a whole movie. And now it's like doing even a cheap small thing. I'm like, I don't have the time. It's kind of like Cats in the Cradle by Cat Stevens, with the dad
right.
who doesn't have time to play with his son. I'll be like, it's like I'm busy now and I can't service my art because now I'm doing the political YouTube channels and stuff to make a living. That
Right.
And
Yeah. And
everyone's like, oh, I can't wait for your YouTube channel to die so you can do more art. And I'm like going, F you. I'm like, this is one of the few times I've been able to pay my rent without looking over my shoulder all the time. I don't have time to
right.
do comics and animation and stuff. And just let me can I pay some bills for the first time in 30 years of my life?
Yeah,
Oh,
you're tired of the starving artist phase, it can only last so long.
I know how
But
to be a starving artist very well. The beloved Miss TenNapel, God bless her. It's been 34 years of being the wife of just like a creative lunatic. And so every once in a while, when I just have a little bit of a sellout success, I'm like, do you guys mind if I just, take some money and take a win for once in my life and not make her, have to live on noodles and live out of a car? Do you mind?
right. No, I completely get that. And
I said, when my kids are out of college, we'll go right back to me living in a car and making black and white, esoteric, scratchy Christian eraser head films. Okay.
right. Well, there's a lot of artists that are asking about Lore TV, so I want to take a moment to
Yes.
explain, sort of, for those that don't know. But it's LOR.TV. If you go there, the way it works is it's a subscription streaming service, just like Netflix. The only difference is you actually get to spend your monthly subscription dollars funding artists and films and TV shows and cartoons and stuff like that. And then so it's basically, we like to say it's Netflix and Kickstarter's non-woke baby. But the idea is just allowing you as a subscriber to be able to have some sort of say in terms of where your subscription dollars go in terms of the content. So if you go there, you can subscribe. Barely Biblical is at 80% right now, the second episode, which is teddy bears reenacting the most violent Old Testament Bible stories. It's brilliant, done by Nickelodeon and Disney animator Tim Ingle. And James Arnold Taylor does the voices of that too, who's
Yeah.
Obi-Wan and Disney and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so Yeah, so a lot there. And then if you want to be a creator, I got the link up. Somebody posted. If you go to lore.tv/survey/creator, if you have a really crazy idea that's out of the box, just fill out that form and we'll get in touch with you and you can pitch. We're looking for micro budget sub $5,000 projects right now per episode. And then as our subscribers grow and they stick with us, we'll be able to fund bigger projects week after week. And so that's the goal. And we started with 0 projects. I mean, Doug, when we talked to you, we didn't have a website, right? And
That's right.
so we started with 0 projects. Now we have 55 pieces of content you can watch. And I just tell people, man, just stick around for 3 months and just fund content. And if you want to fund more, if you want to spend more money and really tip an artist, you can buy more loot. That's our currency. Just buy some loot and fund a project. And
Yeah.
yeah, so that's how lore works. It's
And if
pretty
there's
simple.
any angel investors or funders, send Lure money. We need you. You could just
Holy
fund the whole
cow, man.
website, create an incubator for Christians, so they don't have to go out and beg for more investor money. We need some bigger angels to come in and help with the whole project. Would be great.
That's
That's
right.
my message to my
We
fellow.
just brought on to help with that. We just brought on Sean Tomlin, who is senior Fox Sports executive, helped create the X Games. He built Fuel TV, was the creator of the Captain and Casey show on Fuel TV. Just
Mhm.
done it. He just won an Emmy like 2 years ago for Wild Yellowstone for National Geographic. And so like the guy's like super genius. He heard us on a podcast and said, how do I get involved with this? Because nobody else is going after younger generations in the streaming space. And so, yeah, he's our head of programming and he's working on basically building out a content library that gets people to stay around.
Yeah.
And so I'm super excited about working with Sean
Yeah.
uh, and
And
so
no one is doing in entertainment what you guys are doing. So it's important for you guys, if you guys have a show to pitch or you want to fund a show to pitch, to check out this website, check out this platform. It's a new platform to try out, but nothing else is this like punk rock, kind of 80s punk rock, kind of indie groundswell, indie film, funky in the Christian arena. Nothing's even close. Nothing's even close to it. So probably haven't seen this spirit since the late 60s, early 70s zines and chick tracks, like punk rock kind of self-published tracks that came out with the hippie movement is probably the closest thing I've seen to it.
yeah, I
So
mean, no, that's absolutely right. We just wanted to create a place where the artists don't have to compete with an algorithm to get attention, and they can go directly to the audience that's interested in seeing this kind of content and experimental content.
yeah,
So that's it, man. That's what we built. So yeah, subscribe. It's $14 a month, but you get $10 out of that every month to be able to fund whatever you want, and you can fund more if you want. And so it's great, and we're super early in beginning stages. And you're absolutely right; it's the most punk rock thing in conservative and
yeah,
Christian
yeah.
entertainment.
I
It's
have
super.
always been friends with the coolest artists. You guys, I attract lunatics. So be it in the 80s, 90s, be it video games or film or music, I always had the weirdest think outside of the box people. And these guys, the Lure TV guys, Canon Press, just self indie publishing comics at Kickstarter and Indiegogo. What you guys are doing is just it's just you're not doing some mainstream sellout piece of shit that I'm so tired of seeing. People just sell out and go, well, if everyone else does it, I guess that's what I'm going to do. Is because everyone else does it, we're going to put a cross on it, and that's our new plan. This is what everyone else does. And you guys go like, no, we're going to burn all that down. We're going to do our own thing. Let's try this.
That's
Those are my
exactly right.
favorite people.
That's exactly right. We just said, look, man, there's too many gatekeepers, so let's just burn down the gates, And so, but yeah, man, that's, dude, thanks for that. Thanks for that. Yeah. And if you're watching, feel free to, so there's 382 people, watching right now. It's our biggest show ever. So thanks, Doug, for having us on.
Yeah,
We do
and
this
guys, it's more
every Thursday
important
at
to
noon.
fund something like that. You know this. than to buy another cartridge or buy another game or buy a stupid book or whatever. It's like, it's more important. Put the money here and see what happens. You know, it's
Right.
worth it's if you have expendable income and you just try it for a couple months, you don't like it, get out.
Yeah, yeah, and then I think you'll see as more subscribers tell their friends to join, and we're funding stuff on a weekly basis, the website becomes a lot more fun. And so, yeah, so to the people out there, subscribe, and to the accredited investors, give me a call, man. Like we know what we're doing, and we got the team to do it. So awesome. All right, guy. All right, Doug. Thank you so much for coming on, everybody. Thanks for going for listening.
Lure.tv. Go
Yeah,
to
go to
lure.tv.
loor.tv. Free, get a free 7-day trial. Fun content right now, and really looking forward to seeing the result of the show on the site. So thanks